All right, welcome back to Wrestling Retold and Relive with Richie Mars. I, of course, am your humble, gracious host, Richie Mars. And we're still in WrestleMania month, celebrating everything WrestleMania. And I'm here with a returning guest, one of my favorite co hosts to be on here, DFD. Don't follow David. And we are talking about everything WrestleMania 21. But before you do that, thank you all for listening. You could always follow us on the show at Retold Richie Mars on the Instagram and the TikTok, and at Retold Richie on the X or the Twitter. But enough of these shameless plugs. David, how we doing?
We are living great. WrestleMania season is here.
Yeah, we're on the road to WrestleMania. How are you feeling so far about it?
This is great. We are living at a time where it's no better time to be a wrestling fan. In general, not even in North America or in WWE, but just the general landscape of wrestling is just at its peak right now.
Absolutely. And I've said, I haven't had this much fun watching wrestling since we were kids.
At least, yeah.
Much. Around 2004, 2005. And of course, we're talking about 2004 into 2005 of the rises, respectively, of John Cena and Batista. And I think we went over this a little bit last time you were on the show. You were more of the Raw guy. I was more of the SmackDown guy.
Of course, yep.
And I want to get to the rises of Batista and John Cena, but there's somebody I want to talk about concerning those rises, because it wasn't originally supposed to be John Cena and Batista to be in those positions, I guess. It was going to be that Randy Orton spot.
Yeah.
You know, you had Randy Orton become the youngest world champion, and it looked like the dominoes were falling that Randy Orton would be the one to challenge Triple H at WrestleMania. Now, as a kid, big Randy Orton fan.
Sure.
Fantastic theme song, even though he hated it. And it looked like kind of around Survivor Series, like it was going towards that direction of Randy Orton going to regain that world title. But then the Rumble happened. Triple H defeated Randy Orton. And Randy didn't really recover as quickly as we would think.
He didn't rebound as quick as you're saying, correct, yeah. He kind of he got hurt as well, down the line, but right before the going into his feud with the Undertaker, Randy Orton at least, he never had that same fire from when he first captured that world title at SummerSlam, like you were saying, correct?
Yeah. And another thing is that his babyface term was kind of hastily done.
It was a quick turn. It was a quick one.
Where he was gaining popularity with the fans, but it was like one of those things where WWE overestimated how popular he would be with the babyface turn.
Right.
And how he turned babyface was the dominant faction just beats him down, which is good, but you need to have that comeuppance.
Right.
And it just never happened, I guess, to a certain degree. He had the Survivor Series win, which is one of my favorite Survivor Series
being the
matches.
last guy there, yeah.
Yeah, and then the whole GM control of Raw thing, I love that story.
That was cool.
But he never really got into second gear with that. He was overly animated, but that wasn't really his style. It was remember what was his catchphrase? It's not luck, it's destiny. He was a big destiny
That was
guy.
yeah. You know what? I think it was a caution of two things.
Mm-hmm.
It was the motor behind him.
Mm-hmm.
He was mostly a heel, going up to his turn as it was.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, he was, I don't want to say he was forced to be a face because of, Triple H, taking him out, and it was more so about Triple H and the world title than it was about Randy Orton, if you really want to look at the big picture about it.
Yeah.
But I think he was also young. Let's not forget this, being the world
24.
The youngest world champion at the time. It took him a long time to mature.
Yeah. And did you think that was him becoming world champion was kind of like an FU to Brock Lesnar, who left the company earlier that year?
I think in some eyes, yes. You know what? I don't know if that's what their intention was. Some will say yes, and I think for me, sure. If you had to think the guys at the top of the office and everything, they felt the type of way about Brock Lesnar leaving, how he left. I mean, if you look at even the last match he had at WrestleMania, well, yeah, at the last match of the time, I should say, with Goldberg, it wasn't up to standard. We'll call it. But yeah, that was something, and I think pushing Randy at the time to, take Lesnar out of the books definitely had something to do with that as well.
Well, I feel like Lesnar is going to be taken out of the books for a
Yeah,
little bit more.
yeah. I mean,
But that's neither here
yeah,
nor there.
man.
But as a kid, what kind of drew you to Randy Orton, and do you kind of see why he didn't succeed as that face of the company at that time now?
Yeah, so I mean, like, I came in, well, as far as Randy Orton, I came in a little bit after you did, as far as when I started watching him. So I kind of started watching him right in the beginning of his face turn. I don't even believe I saw him as the world heavyweight. Oh, I think I saw him right at the very end as the world heavyweight champion.
Right, yeah, because you got in like late September, and that's like,
Wow, you have a great memory.
yeah, it was like late, because I remember, because you lied to me and said
Oh,
you
wow.
watched wrestling,
Sounds about
but
right.
you
Yeah.
only knew about The Undertaker,
Few-
and then you actually watched it, and then you were like, this is amazing. And I think it was like it was the show where Randy had like the portraits out of like
yes,
Evolution,
yes,
and, like,
in
his
the stage.
and then he had like Sledgehammer, and then he dropped the Sledgehammer in Bischoff's foot.
Yeah, because you know what's funny though is I was watching wrestling back then, still around the same time period, but still without really knowing what was going on per se. So I never saw Randy, win the world title per se. I saw him the few weeks after, or before he lost it. How long was he world champion? He wasn't world champion for that long.
28 days.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe a month.
Yeah.
So I was maybe right after he won the world title. I kind of tuned in as a fan, but so to kind of circle back to your question, for me, he kind of had like that it factor. Let's start out with the obvious. He had the look of just a young kid, but and then you go off that look and you base off that look and you look, all right, his in ring ability, it's there. His in ring ability as a young kid, young 20 years. Kid's already killing in the ring.
Like, you look at Randy Orton, and they're like, this is what a superstar would look like in the 2000s. He had like the tribal tattoos, he had the logos
Yup.
on the tights, and
The attitude.
I called it like Randy Orton syndrome for a long time when we're in the Ruthless Aggression Era, and everybody after Randy Orton was starting to look like Randy Orton, but like a dollar store version of Randy Orton.
Right, there was a little piece missing.
Yeah, but Randy Orton just had everything. The problem was during this time period, as you said, being so young, so immature, it's hard to get someone that young prepared for that spot. It's almost like John Jones. We saw what happened with John Jones in UFC, and he got success very young, and he had a lot of problems. Same thing with Randy, a lot of problems. So then the choice was made to make Batista the challenger to Triple H. And I'm not sure when you first saw like Batista as, oh, he could actually be like the contender to take down Triple H. For me, it was a backstage segment for that Survivor Series match we were talking about. And Triple H said, like, to Batista, you go deal with Edge and Snitsky because they're coming for me and my world title. Triple H left, the world title sitting there. Batista's like grabbing the world title and he's like looking at it. And it's like imagining like him as world champion. That was like the first like little hint that I saw Batista going in this direction. When did Batista first start getting over as a personality to you as a fan?
Let's see. I mean, when did he start getting the face reactions? Let me ask you that. Because I know you have a great memory with this.
Yeah, so for me, like, they were teasing a little bit. Do you remember it was the
Like
GM role when Benoit was the GM?
Yeah.
And Chris Benoit said, oh, I'm going to face Triple H inside a steel cage tonight for the world title. And they teased a breakup angle with Triple H and Batista, with Triple H being laid out back and Batista walking around pissed off. So Batista was like pissed off, Triple H is knocked out, and Edge is like, well, that sucks. And Benoit's like, I'm going to face you in a cage instead. And Edge is like, what? So they had their cage match, and then it turned out to be a ruse. Like, Triple H and Batista were in cahoots. But the fans were really behind Batista betraying Triple H at this point. And then you had go forward a little bit into that Elimination Chamber and remember the Beat the Clock challenge. That was like the first Beat the Clock challenge.
Right.
Batista got pissed at Rhino and and the deal was he would like let the clock run out
Right.
for Triple H, so Triple H could like have more time to beat his guy.
Yup.
And Batista's like, Rhino pissed me off. I did what needed to be done. I'm sorry, you know. And then Triple H is like going, da 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 da, and Batista's like, hey, now you are starting to piss me off. And then that's when you see those wheels in motion.
I mean, for me, I would say like I mean, those are always little hints, like you're saying right now, you know, in the weeks prior. So even leading up to the Royal Rumble, but that's great because even when Batista won the Rumble, he was getting ovations. When he won, he had a whole full-on ovation behind him when he won the Rumble. So it's crazy because like when you saw Batista, for me at least, at the Elimination Chamber, you saw him like dominate.
Yeah.
And him lead. He was doing what Brock Lesnar was doing before Brock Lesnar. And you saw him just be a one-man wrecking crew, and you saw him in the middle of the ring. He had that world championship factor on him at the time. You kind of saw it, and it sucks because obviously it's part of the storyline. But you know, when he kind of backed down, well, Triple H could have saved him obviously when getting attacked and whatnot. But you know, he did everything for Triple H just to, you know, take one for him basically. But that's for me. That's when I kind of noticed, like, okay, like he's putting all the baggage and all of the weight of the whole company on his shoulders, and he just gets pinned. Like for me, that's what I'm looking at. Like a guy, like, okay, he can kind of do it all as far as like be a world champion or at least a future world champion, and still be a guy to, you know, help the next guy. So that's like a full package superstar in my eyes. You know, when you really break it down to the little pieces, you know.
Yeah, and there were like the little subtleties, like, you know, the smirk, like Batista always looked good in like a suit. He had a presence about him. He was more mature, and the way he left Evolution compared to Randy Orton, it seemed like this is how a man makes a decision versus how a kid gets forced to make a decision. With Randy Orton, he was forced out of Evolution because he, like, you know, betrayed Triple H or whatever.
In his mind.
With Batista, it was more like he made that decision, and we're going to get to that in a bit, but let's switch gears over to the SmackDown side of things. SmackDown landscape, a little different, not by much. We still have a dominant heel champion with I use the term dominant heel group as a little quotations with the cabinet.
Yeah. JBL's cabinet. Oh yeah.
Great times.
Orlando Jordan, the Bashrooms.
With JBL, because I lived through this entire title reign. You came in part way through a little bit, and let me tell you, it was pretty rough as a kid because JBL was such like a hated heel champion, and the way he would win, it would never be straight up. Like with the Eddie Guerrero bull rope match finish, which is actually funny because apparently, according to Bruce Pritchard, they couldn't figure out a finish for a bull rope match because no one's seen one in WWE for like years. So Vince McMahon is like, call Dusty. And Bruce is like, well, Vince, Dusty works for TNA. And Vince is like, call Dusty. You know? And it's like basically calling your competition.
Yep.
Being like, hey, we'll figure out an ending. And the ending was, you know, JBL's shoulder hits the pad first before Eddie's hand, which is I think was a clever finish.
It's definitely was a different one, different type of finish that you wouldn't normally get out there. So I like it.
And then he beat Undertaker by DQ in SummerSlam, and then beat Undertaker in a last ride match.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah, and then beat Booker T. Thanks to Orlando Jordan, like Josh Matthews. If you remember that team, I actually like that storyline.
Wow, that's a long time ago too.
Yeah, and then he beat all of them in a fatal 4-way thanks to Heidenreich. If you remember
yeah, of course, absolutely.
And it was a different type of dominance than Triple H. Like JBL wasn't the strongest booked champion, I guess, but
he was as much of a coward champion as I think they can book a coward champion.
Yeah.
But like where he came from Bradshaw to JBL, you know, and then for him to get to the top and then for him to use all these antics, it went so well, and that's why I, especially as a kid at the time, hated it. Like the same people who hate on, and I said this off podcast, but the
Yeah.
same people who hate on Roman Reigns right now, this dude is money. This
Mm-hmm.
dude is box office. Like I understand, his lack of wrestling and appearances or whatever, but like you have to look at the big picture here. Like this dude is money, and it wouldn't be money if it wasn't for how he's playing it now.
Well, I mean, JBL's purpose for being champion was to build him up, build him up, build him up, and then him to eventually drop it to who they perceive the next young guy of the company, which would be John Cena. And let's rewind to see what John Cena's year was like building up. He was in the U.S. title scene. He had the best of 5 series with Booker T.
Yeah, it's a great feud.
Immediately loses it to Carlito.
Oh, I was so pissed as a kid.
Oh my
So
God.
pissed.
Then he got. Do you remember the storyline?
With the kidneys.
Yeah, they got
in the nightclub.
stabbed in the nightclub with the kidneys.
Yep.
And it was. I'm not sure about you. It was a little hard for me to understand what was going on as a kid, because it's like it was an after hours nightclub with a kid, and then it's like Carlito was like, "Oh, Carlito wasn't there," and then next week it's like, "Oh yeah, Carlito was there, but then when he showed up, I left," and then Carlito's bodyguard Jesus,
Yeah, I remember him.
like they Teddy Long did like a background check on him.
Yeah, he just
And,
randomly
and,
popped
his,
in.
and because Teddy Long has that power with the authorities.
Of course, yeah.
You know, he
yeah.
could make you have a tag team match player. You could go 1-on-1 with the Undertaker, and he does background checks for all his superstars.
It's a great job.
It's a great gig. He's done for years.
He's a Swiss Army knife. It's great.
5-tool player, 5-tool GM.
And ref.
And then John Cena destroyed Jesus at Armageddon, so much
Yeah.
so that they re-aired the match on SmackDown in its entirety to show it's like, hey, this guy has been
Means
written off
business
TV.
Forever.
Yeah, and Cena showed back up with the spinner U.S. belt. And like we were saying with the Rumble, he came runner-up to Batista, the same Rumble that Vince McMahon tore both his quads.
Yeah, another good time.
Yeah, and that botched finish with
Fox finish, but I mean, I don't care.
I think it added to it.
Yeah, I loved that ending. I think that's one of the best Royal Rumble endings, personally.
Yeah.
Not even in our lifetime, in the history of the Royal Rumble, because you really had two passing up the torch type guys simultaneously land. Like, you couldn't book it any better.
Yeah, it's like the truth is stranger than fiction, and that just played out picture perfect. But with John Cena and his rise, for me as a kid, like I was hoping, but looking back on it now, it was obvious they were touting him as the next guy. And watching his match at the time back in matches from 2004, 2005, you can definitely see the ring work wasn't as polished,
Sure.
you know, because they used it all the time in commentary. John Cena is very unorthodox, the unorthodox style of John Cena, which in layman's terms is like, hey, we kind of know he's not ready, but we're going to make sure he's ready for you guys. What did you think about John Cena, the character back then, and what do you think about him now?
You know who, and this is like a random thought to me that came to me the other day. Yep. John Cena at the time kind of reminds me of LA Knight in a way.
Yeah.
And what I mean is because kind of similar to what you're saying, like they weren't the best in the ring, you know, but that the young John Cena you saw, you know, when you saw the big picture, he was obviously being set up to be the next guy and to have the ball and run with it. Mm-hmm. But he also had the skills. I mean, the talent in the promo was always there.
Charisma was there.
Charisma was always there, you know. The in-ring ability he was a work in progress when he came in, and he wasn't horrible when he first debuted. You know, if you look back at his match with Kurt Angle, you know, back when he actually did debut. But you know, I'm not saying he's like a Chris Jericho or Eddie Guerrero inside the ring. No, by no means. But by the time, you know, he made and got into the main event scene, yeah, I think he was ready to take that next role. And he's kind of, and like I said, it's kind of like LA Knight right now. LA Knight has the very similar tools that Cena had back then. Because if you look at his moveset, it's nothing spectacular or, you know, out of the ordinary, but he makes it work to his style, and the way he delivers it, it just comes off.
It's the combination of the timing, the theatrics of it, the pausing to let the crowd react to the moves. It's
Right.
not like what you would see with other guys where it's like they'll hit move after move after move after move, and the crowd doesn't get a chance to react to it
Right.
as big. And I think with John Cena and LA Knight in that comparison, I think is a really great comparison. LA Knight is obviously a lot more polished because he's been
Doing this for so
doing
long,
it for
yeah.
so long. But as far as being quote unquote basic, sometimes basic works better.
It gets done.
You and I, we could both name the 5 moves of doom, so to speak. But if we take like a talented person like Konosuke Takeshita from AEW, or if we have like
Be here all day.
like a Phoenix, like a let's go to WWE. Let's go like for
Go to Carmelo Hayes. I mean,
Carmelo Hayes.
he's a great young guy.
Yeah.
You know, even Braun Breaker, who just debuted recently. You know,
Like, you'll have to pause and think about, all right, what are their signature stuff that they do? But when you have guys like a John Cena, like a Randy Orton, like a Batista, you could name all their signature spots back to back to
Right.
back to back to back. And with John Cena, we didn't even get to the 5 moves of doom. As we saw with what we're going to talk about, there weren't really any moves that were happening. But let's go to how John Cena earned this championship opportunity against JBL at WrestleMania. It was the SmackDown tournament where the competitors were John Cena, Orlando Jordan, Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio, Kurt Angle, Undertaker, Rene Dupree, and Booker T.
Toof.
So how the story of the tournament shook out was John Cena defeated Orlando Jordan, Kurt Angle defeated Rey Mysterio, Undertaker and Rene Dupree had a double disqualification because Luther Reigns and Mark Jindrak, remember them?
Oh yeah,
Uh,
that left-handed doom from
love,
Jindrak.
love the left hand of
The
doom.
slap.
Oh yeah, that's what happened. So
Yep.
this is complete sidebar. So
If you know, you know. If you
yeah,
know, you know.
so we used to play a lot of Day of Reckoning as kids, and there was no left-handed punch we could make as a signature, so we made Mark Jindrak's finisher be woman slap number 2.
Yep.
And it was just like, it was funny because in Day of Reckoning, when you hit like a finisher, it will replay like 3 different times from
Like
different angles.
Like so, like mega, like hyped up, and
and it's like it'll have the music like it will like repeat that tune, and then it will make the slapping sound and go slap, 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 and it was just like, oh my god. So yeah,
and it worked.
So they cost Undertaker and Rene Dupree their chance at glory,
Right.
and then Booker T defeated Eddie Guerrero by being very smart. If you remember this finish, do you remember the finish where they were facing off against each other? If not, I can remind you.
You might have to give me a little.
So Eddie Guerrero was
Reminder on
feigning
that.
like an ankle injury, and Booker T was backing off, and then Eddie Guerrero like was hopping on his leg, showing the crowd, and then Booker T looks at the Tron and he sees that Eddie was feigning an injury,
I think I do actually.
and then
wow.
Eddie was like sneaking up, goes for a suplex. Booker T counters into a roll up and pulls the tights, and he moves on.
I vaguely remember that. I mean, I know, I remember him faking the injury, but that's, yeah, you have very good memory. Wow.
I remember it because the whole tournament was set to "Enemy" by Fozzy.
Oh, great song.
Yeah,
Great song. Great band.
they are a band.
Yeah.
They are indeed a band.
Well, opinionated.
Yeah. Oh boy. That's a different podcast. But John Cena and Booker T move on, and then Kurt Angle gets a bye into the finals because his guys cost Undertaker and Rene Dupree the shot. We were robbed of that Kurt Angle Rene Dupree match. And then John Cena defeated Booker T for old time's sake, and then John Cena defeated Kurt Angle at No Way Out to gain his entry.
Yeah, I remember that.
I want to ask you this, because as a kid, because Kurt Angle already kind of teased his feud with Shawn Michaels at the Royal Rumble. So I knew a little bit, even as a kid who didn't know what a dirt sheet was, that I'm like, oh, obviously Kurt Angle's going to lose because him and Shawn Michaels are going to WrestleMania. Did you feel like that as a kid, or did you like still kind of seen that innocence of like Kurt Angle has a chance to go on to WrestleMania to face JBL?
You mean like once the Shawn Angle happened, or prior?
Yeah, like once the Shawn Angle happened.
To be honest with you, when the Kurt Angle thing happened, I was a little, cause so even going into this, I think was still maybe my first full complete year of a fan. I want to say, or at least being a full fan of watching it. Or not consecutive, but
Consistently.
consistently. Yes, that's the word. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So when the whole thing with Angle and Shawn happened, I was a little like confused in a way because of how they were separate brands and how they were gonna make it work. You know, I was kind of new to the whole inter-branding type of match that could happen at WrestleMania.
Yeah.
So I didn't think he was gonna go for the world title per se, but I didn't know 100% that he was gonna go for HBK, and I'm 100,000% glad they did because the match they had at WrestleMania was spectacular. It was out of this world.
All right, let's go back to the Raw side.
Yeah.
So Batista just wins the Royal Rumble, and I did like how he entered into the Royal Rumble. He defeated La Resistance, and he said, guess what? When I'm I'm going to shove that flagpole up your ass. And then he actually did. Man of his word.
Both of them, yep. Oh, yeah.
So this was a pretty interesting first part of the storyline between Triple H and Batista, where Triple H was very motivated to make Batista switch to the SmackDown brand to
protect himself. Really.
Yeah, that's what we did. And one of the better parts of the angle, I thought, was Batista saw JBL's limousine in the parking lot, went over to go there, and he's like, JBL, come on, where are you? And then the limo
starts going through.
And then Triple H pushes Batista out of the way, and the limo kind of speeds off.
You know what's funny about that is I remember watching that, and I was like, still a little naive about the whole.
You told me at school the next day, yeah.
Yeah, because I remember I guess I stayed up late watching it because it was always like 5 minutes past. I think Raw ended like at 11:05 and this is like 11.
Yeah, they had the overrun.
Right, like 11:07, 11:08, and you gotta remember we're young too, so like you can't go past.
Yeah, we were.
This is
we
before
were like 11, 10.
Was it? Shit, wow, that's
yeah,
crazy.
Yeah.
Could be. I mean, but this is before iPads. I still had a flip phone. Well, I didn't even have a flip phone at the time.
Like what we would do after school, we would go on the WWE.com website.
Like actually though,
click on the video that they had the preview in. They would take us to an embedded video of, and it wasn't like the YouTube videos they put on now. It was like short, like 45-second clips.
Yeah.
Maybe you'd be lucky if you got maybe 2 minutes.
Oh no, I don't think you got that long. Yeah. I don't think so.
Like maybe that, but it's like it was on like 144p.
Yeah, like something crazy.
Like it was like very pixelated.
But like that's, or just go on the WWE.com, watch the article results, whatever.
Because I remember in school the next day, you were telling me, you're like, dude, Triple H saved Batista.
Yeah, so like, to my point before, it was like, so I was still obviously very naive with what was going on and new to what was everything, and Batista being the Rumble winner was my first one since I've watched wrestling consistently. So I'm watching this, I'm like, oh my god, like everything with everything that was going on with Triple H and Batista in the weeks prior, and then like kind of like you said, Triple H was kind of leading him to go to SmackDown, and all of a sudden he saves him, and of course it's JBL's limo that so happened to do it. That's so convenient that they made it seem like, wow, you know what, Batista actually could go to SmackDown and get his revenge and take out JBL.
Mm-hmm. And Batista actually does show up on SmackDown the next Friday and destroys
I think it was Thursday.
JBL's
Thursday.
It was Thursday.
Thursday night.
It was Thursday because
UPN.
Yeah, they went to Friday later.
Yeah.
That year. But he went to the next SmackDown, destroyed JBL's limo, and then we come to that infamous segment of this was post No Way Out, and there were two contracts for Batista. There was Batista versus Triple H, and then there's Batista versus JBL versus John Cena versus Batista. So there's a lot of things going on here. And of course we're backstage before Big Dave makes his decision. And this is what I always kind of felt was a little weird, was when they kept calling him Dave, because I'm like, who's Dave? Who's Dave?
Yeah,
and then it's like oh, they're talking about Batista.
Yeah, his first name. Okay. I don't know he had a first name.
No, yeah, that was the but because now it's like now we know like WWE they like to kind of like ex-nay the names. Remember Alexander Rusev, and now it was just like Rusev. There was Apollo Crews, then he was Apollo for a bit.
Matt Riddle. He was Riddle, and then back to Matt Riddle.
Yeah, WWE, you gotta be like, I want to know your process for ex-naying like these these first and last names.
Here's another one, Carlito Caribbean Cool.
Yeah,
I mean, that was a mouthful, so
and I don't think Triple C would really pass when we got a Triple H over.
Yeah,
maybe C cubed.
Okay,
that'd be cool.
C cubed, well,
C cubed
didn't work for EC3 though.
Yeah,
you hit some, then you swing and a miss sometimes. It's just luck of the draw. Sometimes you just...
I still don't get it.
I mean...
I don't understand it.
I can tell you.
I don't know why he would be called EC3 when there was no, like,
Ethan
Carter. There's no Carter in the...
Where's the first EC 1 and 2?
Yeah. Thank you, Dean, for that. That was actually a pretty fun line. I know it's cheesy and stupid, but...
No, that was a
fun line.
That was a great line.
Yeah. So...
Back on topic,
Triple H and Ric Flair were backstage, and Triple H is looking disheveled, and Ric Flair's like, "What's going on, champ?" And Triple H is like, "Do you know how hard it is to get footage from SmackDown all the way to Raw? Because it was so hard back then to like cross brand lines."
Yep.
And because they showed an interview of JBL like trash talking Batista after winning the Rumble. And
that's right.
And JBL's like, "Why is this happening?" And he's like, "I'm not doing any of this." And Triple H, he's like, "Do you know how hard it is to get those stupid horns on that stupid limousine and make it seem like it's going to run over?" And Ric Flair's eyes are like bugging out. And he's like, "Oh my God." And Triple H is like, "Look, Batista doesn't know what's good for his career. So we have to give him a little push, just to like let him know that it's best for him to challenge for the WWE Championship." And Ric Flair's like, "Oh my God, champ, you're a genius. You're so good." Like, Ric Flair was like the ultimate hype man back then.
Best sidekick in the world.
Yeah.
Yep, could do no wrong.
Well, Ric Flair can do some wrong.
Not if you ask Ric Flair. I don't know about that.
I'm not gonna buy Woo Energy anytime soon. I'll let you know that.
Woo, woo, woo.
You know it.
Thank you.
The best shot of the whole angle, I think, is Triple H and Ric Flair celebrating a job well done, and then you have Batista outside the locker room, just like stroking his chin, just like smiling and shaking his head. And then we finally get to the contract segment, and then Triple H is making his pitch for Batista to go to SmackDown, saying, "What happens if Ric Flair was the world champion and Arn Anderson was the WWE champion? They would have been unstoppable." And Batista's like, "Hunter, I knew what I was going to do for a long time." And then Batista picks up the contract, gives Triple H and Ric Flair the thumbs up. Triple H and Ric Flair, they both have like cheesy grins, like double thumbs up. And then Batista's like, "Yeah." And then his face gets serious, and then thumbs down. And then you just see like Ric Flair, his face just go shock. Triple H's face is high, and Triple H is like, "You mother!" And then like Batista like clotheslines both of them.
Takes off his head,
throws Ric Flair out. And I remember this distinctly. Like Batista, like he doesn't rip off his dress shirt. He like annihilates. Like you see the buttons,
everything
just, like,
rip off.
Every single button just flies off. And Batista's like, "Bah!" And then he just like Batista bumps Triple H through the table. And Batista's like, "I made my decision, Hunter." And it's like, "I'm going to stay here right here on Raw, and I'm taking the World Heavyweight Championship from you."
Iconic.
Great stuff. Do you think this was the peak of the angle?
Yeah, actually, I think so. I think when you look back at it, yeah, because the build-up was really toward the actual turn.
Yeah.
So once you had the confirmation of the turn, then it was like, okay, now let's go. Like, all gears are on. Like, let's pedal to the metal. Mm-hmm. But again, sometimes it's not about the destination. It's the journey to there, and the amount of little tidbits they were leaving for months about this, and even teasing it as a full turn. Then no, it's not actually gonna happen.
It was a slow burn.
Right, exactly.
It was a very
But it
big
was
slow burn.
But it was great. It made it worthwhile, honestly.
And sometimes I prefer the slow burn stories.
Right.
Like this recent one with Drew McIntyre, in his heel turn. Like, it was slow to get started because when he came back at SummerSlam, he faced Gunther, and then he didn't turn fully heel, I guess,
Much
until
later.
Probably November-ish, I want to say.
Yeah.
Like, right before War Games.
Yeah.
So it was like
Mid.
August to November, but you saw like those teases a little bit more and more. But I always enjoy that because you get the reason, you get the why, you get the who, what, when, where, why, how. And those questions I really do appreciate in not just stories, but like wrestling in general. Like, I'm still waiting for why Brock Lesnar attacked Cody Rhodes. We're never gonna know. I don't think we're ever gonna know.
Now we're definitely never gonna know.
And again, we're recording this before Elimination Chamber. We still don't know why Cody chose Roman after he let The Rock go by. So, if that ever happens, this part's probably gonna get edited out. So
I don't think so.
No, it's not. We're not. I'm not gonna be that.
We're gonna just.
We're gonna let her. We're gonna do it live.
In the army, we would say this is Charlie Mike. It's a continue mission. So we're gonna just continue with what's going on here and just not abide with whatever outside nonsense.
Let's switch it over back to the SmackDown brand.
Absolutely.
So
there
John
you go.
John Cena wins the tournament. He spinebusters JBL off the No Way Out set after that brutal barbed wire steel cage match against the Big Show.
Yeah.
Batista was also at that show, still kind of teasing he might choose JBL, but he didn't. But now we have John Cena, which was pretty cool because he had the WWE champion and the United States champion face to face. And they never really built the U.S. title up like this before. Like, you had Brock and Big Show be teammates as WWE and U.S. champion, but you never had them really face off like this. And it's kind of a rarity nowadays to have the U.S. title or any like
secondary
title be as
like in a main event picture. You mean?
Yeah, like in a main event picture. Like we have Logan Paul in the Elimination Chamber, but it's not really like the same.
Unless he wins, that's sure changes the landscape a little bit of that aspect.
Hypothetically, if he won,
Sure.
But it's one of those deals where it immediately like almost catapults that title up, but it's also probably due to the fact the guy who's holding the title, which John Cena, he was that rising star at that time.
Right.
And then he's not U.S. champion for long because JBL cost him the U.S. title for his crony, Orlando Jordan, who then goes to have a 5-month run with the championship that, honestly, I don't... Do you have a favorite Orlando Jordan U.S. title match?
Yeah, when he lost it.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was the 25-second one,
right?
Exactly.
Mike, thank you. So, I mean, that says enough right there. But I mean, he even burned the spinner.
Yeah, that was crazy. Let's talk about that segment. So, I've never seen this before. I'm not sure if this even exists. So, they put the spinner U.S. Championship in a trash can.
Yeah.
Like a trash can. Like not like a fortified trash can, like the normal trash can
you hit somebody
that
in the
you
head
would
with.
see like in a hardcore match.
Yeah.
Like that aluminum trash can. And JBL had like this, in my mind, it's like this cartoonish remote, with like the big button.
Right.
Like the big button, like the red button in the center.
Push.
And then he just like pushes it, and then like the trash can like explodes. And then like Orlando Jordan gets given the old U.S. title design. But what I like, and I'm not sure if you remember this, like those little pre-match, like motion graphics that they used to do?
What do you mean?
It's like, coming up next, we're going to have JBL and Orlando Jordan.
On the bottom of the screen?
Versus Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio, and then you see them, like, the motions.
Yes, yeah,
so
of course.
Orlando Jordan's, like, his motion for that night, like, he had the U.S. spinner belt. He was like, ugh. He was, like, looking at disgust.
Really?
and then after that segment, they switched to Orlando Jordan modeling, like, the old title design, looking so happy.
Oh, that's funny. I know, I never noticed that.
No,
wow.
it was, like, that little attention to detail.
Oh, my goodness. I wish I could pull that off ever, but...
Yeah, but John Cena interferes later that night. And then the next week, John Cena is calling out JBL, and Teddy Long comes out without glasses. And I said to this off air, I'm just like as a kid, I was like, why is he coming out without glasses? And then John Cena is like, all right, you're either part of the solution or you're part of the problem. And it's funny, you catch Teddy Long off mic saying, I'm not the problem. And John Cena's like, well, you're part of the problem. And then he just like hits the FU on Teddy Long. And Teddy Long decrees a rule that John Cena is not allowed to attack JBL unless provoked first. Because if he does attack JBL, he loses his WWE Championship opportunity. What did you think of this ruling, not only in the storyline, but this ruling in general, where the person can't attack the other person or else they forfeit XYZ?
I used to be someone who was kind of like a little on the tacky side of it, just because I felt like that's kind of like a savior, like a planned CDEF type of thing.
It's kind of like prolonging something just to prolong it.
Right, without giving it a set reason,
Yeah.
you know. But, you know, now that I look at things in a certain way, or I think my viewpoints in wrestling has grown, I'm not 100% opposed to it, because you can really make it correct. You can really build it up where you can't touch this other person or you will lose your title shot over here. You could really, depending on who those superstars are, you could really make that into worthwhile. Whether it's two, you know, brawlers or two guys with like attitude, you know, like loose cannon guys, you know, whatever it is. But that's very situational. But overall, you know, I wasn't the biggest fan up until, I guess, you know, recently, I would say.
So another thing happened here, and that is the debut of The Time Is Now. The theme song that we know John Cena has. We all love it. But I got a very tough question for you. Might be tough for you, might be easy for you. What is the better theme song, Basic Thugonomics or My Time Is Now?
So I got the CD of John Cena's album when it came out.
Oh, so do I.
At Borders, when it still was a thing.
Ooh, that's
okay.
a throwback.
All right. For my CD player back in the day. So like I loved like the trumpets of that theme song, and even when he debuted the theme song too, you know, like a few weeks before WrestleMania, it really was like it set the stage for him. It kind of set the stage for his career as well. If you
It's
really
like
think
that
about
triumphant, like we're here.
Yeah, like, and I liked his old theme song for a good while, and to be honest, in the beginning I wasn't the biggest fan of it, just because it didn't really have too much of a tune. You know, it wasn't like a song per se. It was more of a like just record scratching.
Yeah.
So right, but I would say I think I'd probably like his old one a little better. Like it kind of grew on me. Like the nostalgic part of it kind of grew on me a little bit. And we've only heard it I think a handful of times since he stopped using it.
Yeah, well, like when he did like a throwback with The Rock, and he did, I think, one more
On
with
Raw.
Elias at WrestleMania 35. You know what? You know when he did it?
The Raw. He did it when going up to The Rock, building up.
He did that, but he
on that
also
Raw.
did it. Remember WrestleMania 25, like the clones of John Cena?
Yeah,
They all came
yeah.
down to Basic Thugonomics.
I remember. Yeah, that was another part. Yeah, so exactly. So only a handful of times I used it since, which again, you know, I personally would have liked it if they changed his theme song at some point into like another stage in his career. But I guess if you really think about it, he really didn't enter another stage.
So he was. This is a fun behind the scenes thing. There was a discussion to turn John Cena heel at one point. I'm not sure if you know the story. So he confirmed in an interview with Chris Jericho when they were doing like one of those network interviews, where there was a discussion for John to turn heel during his feud with The Rock. And there was actually Total Bella's episode or Total Divas episode where him and Nikki Bella are working out, and John Cena is like in a singlet.
Yeah, I remember that.
And it's like a maroon, like yellow singlet, and on the back it says "Fear My Name." And I remember they trademarked that, like a little bit before, like the John Cena Rock feud like started in 2012. Like they did the whole 2011 build up, and then 2012, that's when they did it, and it made sense because they were doing like the Kane, like Embrace the Hate deal.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah. So that all happened, but then at this last minute they pulled it because Vince said it wasn't time, but also they signed a huge endorsement deal with Kmart at that time.
Kmart, wow.
Yeah. So, and they didn't want to ruin that, so that also played a factor. And there was no strong enough babyface at that time to take the reins.
Yeah, I mean,
You had Punk, but I don't think WWE were really comfortable with CM Punk being a face of the company. But that's then, this is now. So, during this whole deal, JBL's trying to provoke John Cena, saying very degrading things about his mom, his family life, about being in trailer park, and they culminate in a debate, if you remember that. And again, John Cena is not allowed to touch JBL or he will forfeit his championship opportunity. So John Cena is trying to provoke JBL to attack him, which includes spray painting his limousine,
his suit,
puncturing holes in his limousine tires.
The horns, I think he did something too as well.
He ripped off the horn.
The water.
Yeah, so this is where it's a very loose of unprovoked attack, I guess. So
yeah,
again, John Cena not allowed to touch JBL.
I guess skin to skin contact, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess that was the rule, because what he does is he wants to test JBL's 10-gallon hat. So he fills up a pitcher with water, and he's like, dude, that's not even a gallon. He's like, all right, I'm done with this. And he puts the hat on JBL's head. So I guess he didn't, actually touch JBL.
But he patted it down.
But, it's like, that there's going to be, a court of law that has to,
You know what's funny is, as a kid, I never noticed that, though. You don't even think, because you think touch, punchers, or at least, I guess, skin to skin or skin to suit or something, but I don't know. Again, I don't make the rules around here. I don't get paid.
No,
so.
yeah, we just kind of sit and watch, and we just enjoy the stuff.
Yeah.
And then John Cena spray painted JBL, and then wrote "FU" on his suit, and then bing bada boom, there you go. And now let's switch off to Raw, because I don't know about you, after Batista makes his choice, I don't remember the rest of the build.
So Batista makes his choice.
I know stuff happened, but I don't after that whole thing, everything after the fact kind of blends in together.
I think it was just a lot of promos, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because at that point he fully turned, so it's kind of just going back and forth, kind of just building as far as everything Batista's worked for, and him being next up and the Royal Rumble winner, and Triple H, his time is coming to an end, and he's been the man on Raw for a good amount of time,
The Reign of Terror.
Yeah, so to speak.
Everyone's favorite time.
Yeah. That's
what we gotta do one day. We gotta do a Roman versus Triple H.
Yeah.
Reign episode.
And kill me for that. No. Sprinkled in some JBL in there if you really wanted to die that day. Sure.
And Brock. I'm sorry, redacted.
Okay. Yeah. Cancelled. Okay. Yeah. I'll be absent for that podcast. But yeah. That Triple H reign was something of
not just reign, just reigns in general.
That's true.
Because even though he lost the championship, he was still the focal point of Raw.
He never stopped being the focal point of Raw, ironically.
The same promos, the same sort of just remember when Triple H, the whole Benoit Edge thing where they both pinned and tapped at the same time?
Yeah.
The title was held up under Triple H, and then they had the chamber match, only for Triple H to re-win it.
Right.
So it was just okay, what was the point?
There
was a point in that they were telling that one moment in the story that Triple H wouldn't save Batista for the Elimination Chamber. However, you could have done that without Triple H vacating. I don't know. It was one of those I understand, but at the same time there was an easier way to kind of get there.
There was, but in hindsight, I do understand it though, because of you don't. It's more so of, like I said earlier, about the journey there. So, you don't want him. At the end of the day, Batista's always going to be that guy there to take the title off Triple H. So you need Triple H to keep that momentum. So him not having the title, but also still being in that picture, still kind of keeps that momentum with him, and keeps the build there. But so when he gets the title back, like sure as fans it sucks, but it kind of makes story make sense in the long run because when Batista inevitably takes it off.
Yeah.
It's he beat a guy who beat two other guys who in that triple threat match in Edge and Benoit. Even though he had technically lost that match, well,
Right.
I guess he had been pinned, I think, or he had tapped.
No, Edge was pinning Benoit, and then Edge tapped. So Triple H was not even involved.
Oh, right,
in the
right,
decision.
yeah. But even worse, yeah, he was on the outside actually.
Yeah, I remember feeling gypped because originally, like the week before, Randy Orton was like, he's like, next week I'm the GM of Raw, and I'm saying Triple H is defending the world title in a battle royal.
Yeah.
And then Vince came out and it's like, oh, we're not going to do that. What we're going to do is we're going to have a battle royal to determine who's going to face Triple H later in the night. And then Benoit and Edge both won at the same time.
I was confused. I mean, I kind of like it now, looking back at it. I kind of like an ending like that.
I do like the ending like that, but it was just like immediately just like pulling the rug from under everybody,
Oh,
being
sure,
like
sure.
advertising this giant battle royal for the world
Oh,
title.
absolutely.
It's like, oh, it's the number one contender match.
Yeah, I mean, things change, and I would have
Plans change, pal.
Hey, man, that's life.
If any dirt sheet writer tells you, plans change. Got a story wrong? Plans changed.
Yeah, they're not wrong. Plans have changed. Never wrong.
Yeah, no one ever writes a retraction anymore.
Nope.
That's the shocking thing.
But they're very quick to jump on an article before having a full fact. Huh.
Imagine that.
Go figure.
So let's fast forward all the way to WrestleMania 21. Let's go to the WWE Championship match. Now, we just finished watching both of these matches, and these were the two crowning achievements of the faces of WWE. We saw the John Cena JBL match first. It happened.
I guess.
It happened. It was a match that happened.
I've seen worse.
No, yeah, there was nothing.
It wasn't bad.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with it.
It really wasn't bad.
It was just a very.
There.
It was very paint by numbers. Like it's like what I would expect for a TV main event, if that makes sense.
Or even like an opening match of a pay-per-view. Honestly, like it didn't deliver the match in its entirety as much as the build did.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, I think they were saying from what I heard, they were under timed. They were a little short on time, so sure they had to like maybe rush through a few spots or cut through a few spots. Sure, but yeah, I mean it's the build was great. The passing of the torch from JBL to Cena was great.
Yeah, so let me show you, or at least tell you how long this match lasted. So out of everything, this is not including the sumo match, and it's not including the sumo match or the dark match. So this match between JBL and John Cena was 11 minutes and 25 seconds.
Jeez, that's not that long.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, for a WrestleMania main event,
For a WWE Championship,
right, yeah, no, it's not what you want to see.
Because a lot of these matches, like only 2 went past the 20 mark.
In WrestleMania 21.
Yeah, I'll give you a couple guesses which ones did.
What, the HBK and
Yep.
Mr. Kurt's Angle?
Yep, that was
That
was 27-28.
Jeez, Money in the
And,
Bank, I would assume.
No, Batista and Triple H, 21-33.
Oh wow,
Money in the Bank was only a little over 15 minutes.
really?
Yeah.
That was a good match too.
Also, sidebar, because it was the first Money in the Bank match, we didn't. You and I, we didn't watch the pay-per-view, but you had like a scramble feed, and you were talking to your friend about it. We thought this is what we thought as kids: how you win the Money in the Bank ladder match. Not only do you take it off the ladder, you have to sign your name on the contract to secure that position. And we thought, like, somebody told you, like, Christian won it, right? Like, with the help of Tomko?
Yeah. Just like wait, I'm like, was this like the message board thing? I think back there's like,
it was like
a
message
wrestling
board, yeah.
wrestling feed. This is like way in the, I don't know what year this was. 05?
05, yeah.
Jeez, Yeah, it's like still kind of the existence of the internet type of stuff. So,
But we're getting a little off track. So the John Cena and JBL match, like I told you, it was very basic in that it was a lot of clotheslines, hip tosses, neck breakers, shoulder tackles, and I don't know about you, it kind of felt like a very anticlimactic way of JBL's reign ending, because here's a guy who was like a cockroach of SmackDown, of WWE, and then he just got a loses because he missed his finisher and he just gets hit with one FU. And this was back in the day when you got hit with a finisher, it was one and done.
right.
There were no kicking out of finishing moves unless it was like a very super event.
Right, or two legends going at it, or like a big match or something like that. But even so, JBL sending Orlando Jordan to the back, which is something very
Out of character.
right, of all times to do it in. Like
you're at a WrestleMania.
I mean, you literally are the WWE champion because of your cabinet. So I mean, all right, but sure, go off, King. No problem. It's cool.
Yeah.
I guess. And then you lose. So yeah, good job, dummy. Yeah.
So did you think this was the anointment of John Cena, or did you think that happened with the later match down the line?
I think I think one of two things, to be honest, was the turning point. Either when he started wearing that black jersey with the black cap and had that Chain Gang logo walking around, it was right around the same time that he changed his music.
Yeah.
And I was going to say his music was the other point that I was trying to make. Once those two things happened, because even if you look at his Tron, was like screamed out like, bling and champion. It screamed out like main event. So once you saw those two things kind of happen, almost coincidentally, for me at least, you kind of saw it right there. It was kind of like in the book. So you just didn't know if it was going to actually happen or not, because JBL and, his reign was just who could beat him at that time. So you just really never. It's like Roman right now. It's everyone thinks they're gonna be Cody, or Cody's gonna beat him. But after last year, do we know? Absolutely not. But back in the day, John Cena was getting all these. He was just knocking down all these. I don't even know what you want to call it, but
basically they were positioning him really hard at this time. Like he was having the movie on the way. They were promoting his CD.
CD, yeah.
He was going on tour, like not only with wrestling but with the CD as well.
Appearances everywhere, media.
The music video.
I think he was doing some news as well, news appearances.
Yeah, he was doing a lot of appearances, and it was obvious that the company was making him the guy. As obvious as it is today that they're making Cody the guy, same thing with John Cena back then. But on the other hand, they were trying to very distinct the different brands. So John Cena was on SmackDown for long after this. He went to Raw, I think, like a month or two later.
For the draft, yeah.
Yeah, and then it was off to the races from there. And on the other side, we had Batista with Triple H. And this is classic Triple H match at WrestleMania. Classic heel Triple H match at Mania. So it's gonna be given time, and I don't know. I know you said you liked this match, and I liked it fine too, but I don't think fine is like a WrestleMania term you should use that much.
I mean, I thought it was a good match. Given what Triple H, like kind of what you said, what a Triple H match is. How it kind of played out. It started out slow, had its slow beginnings. I think what kind of took people out of it a little bit was like the crowd may not have been so hot as maybe closer to the end. Whereas I think if you ask me now, if you give them or if you give me the same build up and the same superstars now, and you give me the same match, you're gonna see a crowd that is gonna be probably standing out the whole match. And
sick Motorhead entrance though.
1,000%.
Yeah.
1,000%. And I'm sure he probably would have upped it 10 times if it was, current day. But yeah.
I mean, he topped it the next year with the whole King of Kings entrance. You know, the whole Conan the Barbarian
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Man.
WrestleMania 22, man.
Yeah.
He has some great entrances.
Yeah.
Triple H did. But I think I kind of got sidetracked from your question there. But kind of circling back to what you were saying with Batista and Triple H, like the match itself, I liked it. You know, I also liked, you know, Triple H. I wasn't his biggest fan. You know, like there are some people out there who will like Triple H entirely a little too much. But you know, we won't. You know, it's all good though. It's no big deal. They don't know any better. It's all good. But you know, Triple H was cool. He had a cool little run, cool little historic run for sure.
We didn't grow up with Triple H, you know. Well, I mean, we grew up with him, but
Right.
we didn't grow up with
the
My Time Triple H.
Right.
We grew up with Reign of Terror suit wearing,
repaired quads.
yeah,
Triple H.
20-minute promos. In this business,
different type of facial hair every week, type of guy.
Well, I knew him as like babyface Triple H, you know, like no facial hair.
That's you know?
Yeah. And that cursed me because like in SmackDown vs. Raw 06, he had like the mutton chop, like in like real life, but in like the game he was babyfaced, and that always threw me off.
Never made any sense. You couldn't change it as much.
No,
as you could
no,
now.
you couldn't customize it.
It was stupid.
No, they fixed it in 07 though.
One whole year.
I mean, 07 was a great game.
It was.
So, out of these two, which one had the better anointment, John Cena or Batista?
I mean, in my opinion, I go with Batista only because I enjoyed it a little more.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I love the whole Cena JBL rivalry, and really they were like complete polar opposites if you think about it, as far as people and as far as just gimmicks too. You know.
And the storyline payoff was longer, too, with Batista and Triple H.
Yes.
They started telling that story at the end of 04. John Cena and JBL, they only had
a couple months.
Couple weeks. Not
even,
like
I was going to say.
Because it finished at No Way Out.
Right.
And
that was it.
WrestleMania was the next pay-per-view.
Yeah. So, it wasn't too long, but at the same time, you know, they also dropped some hints with Cena trying to chase the WWE title, you know, to try to, I think, build them up as a contender as well.
Because they did cut that promo, I think, with JBL and Cena after the Rumble, and that's usually take 101.
Right,
like,
exactly.
These guys are gonna face.
See you guys later. Yep.
I'm like, see, I'm Mania, kid.
Exactly.
It's like that Futurama. Shut up, take my money.
Right, yeah, which we see still nowadays.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, to me, it was the Batista winning. Because it really set up. He had a great run post WrestleMania. Like, I'm talking about going to SmackDown and everything. Like,
both of them had.
They did. But I mean, I think the obvious answer here has to be John Cena, just because I mean he became the face of the company, and now he's even being anointed as the greatest of all time, which is crazy. But I get it.
Do you think that's a whole WWE marketing thing though? About
100,000%. 100,000%. But that's what I'm saying. That's why I say I get it. I think it's they're just kind of leaning too much into what nowadays everything, you know, everyone's called a GOAT, you know. Mm-hmm. Someone has like a 30-point game and they're a GOAT, you know. So it takes away from the value a little bit.
It's a buzzword.
Right,
it's
exactly.
It's a buzz term.
Mm-hmm.
And you're always going to find that in wrestling, and I feel like wrestling fans take it a little bit too seriously sometimes.
Yeah.
And wrestling is very subjective, as you and I both know, because we don't really argue points in wrestling. We like discussing about wrestling, and I think a lot of people, when we criticize it or we have opinions on it, people automatically assume we're hating it, which is not even true.
Some people, yeah, I agree.
It's just like we like legitimately having conversations about wrestling, and just because it's not what people really want to hear, doesn't mean like we can't talk about it.
Right, because there's great products of wrestling out there, like New Japan, TNA. Great stuff going on in AEW.
Don't get me started. So like on TikTok, every time I put out a freaking AEW vid, it's always anti-AEW people.
Well,
And I'm just like, guys, I make like 99% WWE content. You can comment on that.
Listen,
but you can't. But it's like,
the haters are the
but
loudest
it's like
ones in
I
the room.
understand where they're coming from, because people have an image of what they think wrestling is, and all, not just like AEW, but like you said, TNA, New Japan. Everything tells stories different ways. You know, it's like Batman the Animated Series is going to tell their story very differently from Attack on Titan, even though they're both animated pieces.
Right, of course.
You know, like one's anime, the other one is, superhero. You know, so I do like where wrestling is now, where it's like you can enjoy everything. Just because someone is like a GOAT to you doesn't mean like I see him as a GOAT. Except for Eddie Guerrero, he's the greatest of all time.
Absolutely.
And no one could like dispute that.
Hands down. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, come on now.
Yeah, if people say Eddie Guerrero was mid, I will challenge you on that.
Do a death match even? Absolutely.
We're not going there.
Speak for yourself.
Yeah, but yeah, with Batista and Cena winning at WrestleMania 21, it was a symbol of changing of the guard, but there was still work to be done. The foundation still needed to be built between both of them, because they didn't have that line of in-ring work to build up to that championship. Because back then, you didn't see the top in-ring workers become world champion off the bat. You know, it took Eddie years to even get a whiff of that WWE championship scene. And these were, after Brock and Orton, I guess, were the guys they were really testing with the class of 2002 OVW.
Yeah. With those guys, it was a new run of talent that was coming through, like you were saying.
Because Brock was a success for a year, and then he left.
Mm-hmm.
They tried with Randy, and then he wasn't ready.
He was his own worst enemy, to be honest.
Yeah, and so now it became, okay, let's see how John and Batista go. And to be honest, I think both of them passed with flying colors. And both the reigns pretty much lasted similar time. Batista was 282, John Cena was 280.
Oh, wow.
You know, so they were like 2 days apart, where Cena dropped it in the Money in the Bank cash-in, and Batista tore his triceps.
It's crazy. That injury really changed a lot of things.
Yeah, because we were supposed to get Batista and Randy that year.
Which, who knows what would have happened after that.
Apparently, the plan was always Randy was going to win.
Right.
Because WWE loved Randy. And I don't blame him. Randy's like, if you were to say, what's your picture perfect superstar, like we said in the beginning of the podcast, it was
Orton.
Randy.
Yeah, 100%. Orton. Yeah.
I mean, they even made a rule for the wellness policy that you could work off one of your strikes, because Randy Orton kept popping, allegedly.
It's crazy.
But it's like, look, Randy Orton, like right now, if we had the Randy now that we had back then,
whew, he might be the greatest of all time.
No, and it's crazy that like I know this is like a majority like a John Cena Batista pod, but we're gonna throw Randy in here right now. Like Randy, he's so phenomenal and good, his career, but if you think about it, majority of it was like him on autopilot, essentially.
Well, like I said, he couldn't get out of his own way for a good part of it earlier in his career. Because he was young, brash, it was, still making a lot of mistakes. Right, legend killer. Really was going to his head. Not in a bad way, but
Well, when you get success that young, like it will change you for either the better or worse, And unfortunately, for a period of time, it was worse. But if you think about it, like Randy, like Jerk Randy, only lasted a couple years, because I think he stopped around probably like 09-ish, maybe 08, 09-ish.
I was thinking like 08.
Yeah, like this is like when they trusted him with WWE Championship.
Yeah.
Like titles, yeah.
When he came back from the Kurt Angle ankle injury, or when he broke his ankle, so to speak, from the wellness policy.
No, I think it's even further than that because remember he got sent home from that European tour.
Oh, hey, right, he did.
Because apparently he destroyed like $10,000
Yeah, a
worth of
room.
hotel.
Christ, Randy.
Yeah. God, he's in a better place now, jacked as hell.
Pushing 300.
Yeah. God.
Like what?
I want a name of these nutritionists.
Yeah, I don't know if that's what they're called.
It's chicken broccoli, man. Chicken
Yeah.
broccoli rice.
Yeah, that's what these kids are having nowadays.
All right, but final thoughts on the Batista John Cena stories. Which one do you think? Well, we said Batista's probably like the better story. John
Yeah.
Cena probably had the better long-term payoff, just career-wise.
Sure, I mean he got to the
Where
top.
do these stories rank for you? Are they top like 15? Or are they top 20?
I think, I mean, for me, the easy answer, I can't rate the JBL Cena one per se. I wouldn't put it in my top 10. The Triple H Batista, to be honest, I think I would. Just going, if you take back, their cohesiveness from Evolution and prior to even that, Triple H bringing in Batista,
Like the story was there.
and building him up. And what's crazy is stories like that's always gonna be there. It's just how you go about it and make it, to your liking. And they really knocked it out of the ballpark with that feud. So I like that rivalry, and going past WrestleMania as well. It was a great feud. I enjoyed it. So that's definitely my better feud. Definitely top 10.
Yeah.
That's where I would put mine.
I definitely enjoyed it a lot, and it's like one of those things where you don't know you want it until they give it to you, and you're like, oh yeah, this actually makes a lot of sense. It wasn't like us forcing WWE's hand; it was WWE recognizing the star they had in Batista, and then kind of like taking you on like you
Putting
said,
the wheel behind them.
that journey. And they weren't like hardcore pushing him out of the gate. Like it's like, oh, you want Batista? Here's Batista, like they did with like Daniel Bryan or like anybody else.
They're
Like
kind
that.
of dipping the toes with Batista, and the fans were reacting. So
It's like we'll give you a little,
Right,
then
exactly.
we'll take it back a little bit. We're not gonna like take him off television, but it's like we're gonna kind of like give you bits and pieces. We're gonna leave a breadcrumb trail of Batista
until you get the whole
until you get the whole loaf of bread
through a table.
Yep.
Through a table.
Through a table.
Jesus.
Well, this has been a phenomenal episode of Wrestling Retold and Relive. DFD, any final thoughts, words, concerns, compliments?
It's been another great episode. Thank you for having me. We are in WrestleMania season. Like it's wow.
Getting down to the wire.
And we have Elimination Chamber hours away.
Yes, we are recording this right before the Elimination Chamber.
And you already know we're going to be up right. Well, not for the pre-show because no one's going to really care about that. But
Whoa, now.
I said what I said. But we're going to be there 5 a.m. sharp for this Elimination Chamber broadcast.
I'm sure, because this is coming out right after the Chamber, I'm sure it was a phenomenal show. All the right winners. I'm sure nobody got upset. It's going to be a positive atmosphere.
Oh, yeah. Nothing can go wrong.
All right. So, again, you could follow us at Retold Richie Mars on the Instagram and the Twitter. You could follow us on the Twitter or the X at Retold Richie. I am Richie Mars. TTFN. Ta-ta for now. See you next time and later.